Excellent. My name is Tova Perlmutter. I'm the Executive Director of the Sugar Law Center for Economic and Social Justice. And we're very pleased to have you here with us today. We're going to be announcing some legal action, and we're very excited about this important step for justice in Michigan. I am here, spell my name, Tova, T-O-V-A, Perlmutter, P-E-R-L-M-U-T-T-E-R, Perlmutter.
Thank you.
And you can find information about really any of us, but certainly about me, at our website, sugarlaw.org. So, this morning we're here. I'm essentially just going to help shepherd folks through. None of us is going to speak very long, but the main people that we really want you to hear from are the plaintiffs, the citizens of Michigan who are here to tell their story about why they are taking this important step. So I'm going to tell you who we've got here, and then I will pass the microphone off to Councilwoman Joanne Watson, who we're very pleased to have with us in support of this lawsuit. With us as plaintiffs this morning, we have Edith Lee Payne, we have Evelyn Foreman, and we have Leslie Little. We'll be introducing the attorneys and the other community activists in a moment. But first, I'm going to pass the podium, as it were, to Councilwoman Joanne Watson, who has done tremendous work in pulling this effort together. Thank you for being here.
Hello and welcome to everyone. I'm Councilmember Joanne Watson. We want to particularly express our appreciation to the dream team of attorneys who have been carrying this matter forth so that we can stand up against unconstitutional, undemocratic actions that have been happening in the state. I stand here with 2 of the 28 Michigan citizens around the state who are today filing a lawsuit against the state of Michigan for its unfair, unconstitutional, and unnecessary new law, the so-called emergency manager law that some of us call the dictator law. This law is nothing more than a power grab by politicians, some, that takes away the rights of every Michigan citizen and puts their futures at risk. This dangerous law allows those who want to wage vendettas against their political enemies so they can pursue their own narrow political agendas, not the needs of the people. Michigan deserves leaders who want to wage special efforts to fix our problems. Instead, we have an unconstitutional law that takes away our rights and takes away local decision making. That's why we're coming together all over the state today. There are rolling press conferences around the state in order to stand up and speak up for Michigan. We want reform. We want our elected leaders to work together to find solutions. The emergency manager dictator law goes too far. It's a shameless power grab by certain politicians to take over local communities. The only ones who will benefit from this unconstitutional emergency manager law are certain politicians, Wall Street bankers, and big corporations who will now have local communities and families over a barrel. That's why I'm here today, to take legal action to end Michigan's unfair, unconstitutional emergency manager law, which endangers our community and endangers others across this state. I'm so happy to bring forth our next speaker, one of our plaintiffs, Edith Lee Payne.
Thank you, Councilwoman Watson. Again, my name is Edith Lee Payne. I stand here before you because 48 years ago, I had the honor and privilege of marching with Dr. King for rights and privileges to vote. 48 years ago tomorrow, we marched on this very street of Woodward Avenue with Dr. King. This legislation, Public Act 4, directly violates that law and that legislation that came from those demonstrations. The legislators and the governor this year in January took an oath to uphold the Constitution, both the state and the federal. And this legislation violates those constitutions. We are the people of this state.
That's right.
And Article 1 specifically says all political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for their equal benefit, security, and protection. That's not happening with this legislation. So I join proudly with 28 other people, as well as I'm sure many of you, in making these legislators accountable and responsible for this turn back of time that Public Act 4 does. Now I'd like to turn the next voice you hear will be plaintiff Evelyn Foreman. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Foreman. I can see what Public Act 4 will mean by looking at the anti-democratic measures and practical failures of the emergency managers relative to the Detroit Public Schools, for which I've recently retired. The state-appointed emergency manager, after crippling the school system through inadequate funding. I have worked as a teacher in buildings where the ceiling is falling in, where we've had inadequate heating, inadequate plumbing, and inadequate supplies. And yet, and still, the district has failed to provide the maintenance of the caliber of professionals that we need to carry on and educate our children in this city. Pink slipping all of them is not going to help us to maintain the teachers at the caliber that we need. With regards to some of the things that our children learn in social studies, perhaps some other people need to learn. In the first grade, we began to teach them about the core democratic values, okay? The measures that they're doing right now is certainly not a good example of what those core democratic values stand for.
Right. Yes.
Michigan's new emergency law removes these values and the rights that come with the power of the voters that we as Americans expect to receive. The appointee, or let's call them the EM, will work behind closed doors, will not be accountable to the public to converse relative to any changes or plans that that person will be making concerning our children, our city, our country. As an American and a Michigander, I want a voice and I want to be heard. And I will fight for others in this city to be able to be heard as well. At this point, I will turn this over to Attorney John Philo of the Sugar Law.
Ms. Foreman, what will you spell your last name for me?
Foreman.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Philo. It's P-H-I-L-O. One thing I want to make sure, does everyone have the reporters, a briefing book? If anybody doesn't, speak with Toba. You can grab one there.
We have more folks need them.
I want to thank you all for coming out here today, and I really want to thank Councilmember Joanne Watson, who really is pushing everyone forward to really look at this and to understand that this is about our democratic rights. It's about our rights to government, to an elected government. The court in this case is going to be confronted with the question of whether or not our state constitution has any meaning, or whether it's a sleepy little document that sometimes matters and sometimes doesn't. They're going to have to decide whether on a local government level we have a right to elect our government officials, or whether or not under our constitution the state can establish a local government over the people of unelected officials where they have no accountability to the citizens, and the citizens have no opportunities to redress. This law, Public Act 4, is an unconstitutional response to a national and statewide economic crisis. This is not a local crisis. It's national and statewide that were caused by unregulated financial institutions doing what they saw fit across the country, and further caused by failed national policies that hit the Midwest below the belt. Our state government and Lansing politicians had an opportunity to come together for a statewide solution to statewide problems. Rather than do that, they enacted a power grab over local government. It's important for everyone to recognize this law establishes a new form of government over our communities. This is nothing less than a new form of government. And where it's being enacted is over our poorest communities and communities of color. Our constitutional rights are not conditioned on our financial wealth. They're not exclusive to one class one race, one gender. That's what this lawsuit is about. I think it's very important for the media to understand this is not legislation that establishes emergency financial manager. It's gone further. That was the old law. This is an emergency manager over every aspect of local government. Not just the finances, not just the books. It's your policy decisions. Things like whether you'll have strip clubs in your community, where will they be located, how close do they need to be to a church. That is not a financial matter. That is a political matter. And that exposes this legislation as a power grab at the local level. Some people are going to ask, why should I be concerned? My community isn't at risk. The plaintiffs in this case, and these are just a few, who we're very proud of, come from across the state because they recognize that a threat to democracy in one place is a threat to democracy in every place. This legislation gives the governor broad discretionary authority to declare a financial emergency and appoint an emergency manager. It gives equally broad discretion to the state treasurer to start that process. I don't know the governor personally. I trust he's a man of integrity, and I trust that he believes in the Constitution. But giving any governor that sort of power is dangerous in any democracy. And it's something that's been rejected by our founding, the founders of this country and of this state.
That's right.
There's just a couple other matters I want to, in terms of the particulars of the lawsuit, which I've touched on. First, we believe that the law, Public Act 4, violates the Constitution by establishing this new form of government and suspending a democratic government of the people during times of financial stress. Secondly, it enacts an unfunded mandates over our communities. It puts all the costs of the emergency managers, and these are new costs, their salary, their consultants, their accountants, their copying, their travel, everything on the local community that is hardest hit. And at the same time, it provides no new revenue streams and mandates no new specific cost-cutting measures. The third area is the people of this state are the ones who define the state. We grant our state legislature, our city councils, legislative power to make laws. That comes from the people.
That's right.
We have done that through our state constitution. What the state legislature has attempted to do is say, thank you very much for that power. We are now going to give it to someone in the executive branch, an emergency manager. We believe that violates the Constitution.
Violation.
And finally, under our state constitution, state government is not permitted to enact local laws except with 2/3 majority of the legislature and a vote of the people affected.
That's right.
Every time that this emergency manager goes over and above or contradicts or contravenes the city charter or city ordinances or enacts their own city ordinances, they're violating that law. They are state officials, and they do not have that power. Finally, there's one, I think it's very important to understand that this violates traditions that have been long held in Michigan. Excuse me while I fight with the wind for one moment. These are long held traditions. And I'm going to there's some words from Justice Cooley that really hit home for me. Justice Cooley, for those who don't know, is the Oliver Wendell Holmes of the Michigan Supreme Court. He was venerated, his principles are held in high esteem, and he had a great deal of courage in the 1800s in establishing many of the laws and principles we're still governed by. He wrote, "The state may mold local institutions according to its views, but local government is a matter of absolute right, and the state cannot take it away. It would be the boldest mockery to speak of a city possessing municipal liberty where the state not only shaped the government, but at its discretion sent its own agencies agents to administer the local government. That's exactly what is occurring here. We stand with Justice Cooley. These plaintiffs are giving their time, their effort, and are truly examples for everyone in this state. We could have had thousands of people join this law, truthfully, folks, but these folks stepped forward, and we're proud to represent them in this case. Thank you, and now I'm going to turn...
Legally, you are asking for an injunction.
We'll have questions after.
Yeah,
we're
we can do the
finishing up.
questions
We'll have
after.
questions.
It's declaratory relief and injunctive
We'll
relief.
have questions.
Too late.
I'd like to introduce Darius Charney. He's an attorney at the Center for Constitutional Rights, and he's going to have a few more words. He is co-counsel with us in this case.
I know we're running late, so I'm going to make my remarks brief. My name is Darius Charney. That's D-A-R-I-U-S. Last name is C-H-A-R-N-E-Y. As John mentioned, I'm with the Center for Constitutional Rights, and I am very honored to stand here today with the council member, the plaintiffs, the Sugar Law Center, the other fantastic Michigan attorneys on this case, and the people of Detroit and the state of Michigan who are standing up for what is a fundamental constitutional rights and principles of our democracy. CCR, my organization, is a national organization dedicated to protecting rights guaranteed by our Constitution as well as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And what we have here today, what we're standing up against, challenging, is an attack on fundamental constitutional rights, not only in the state of Michigan, but around the country. CCR has been involved for the last 4 decades in protecting those rights, standing up for civil rights activists in the South, and more recently taking on what has been a huge abuse of executive power by the federal government in the wake of the 9/11 tragedy. And I think what we have here today is the state of Michigan, that government, responding to a financial crisis and an economic crisis by doing the same thing, and a huge abuse of executive power by the state of Michigan. And it is happening, as John mentioned, in low-income communities, communities of color. What we are seeing is the powers that be, who are the ones responsible for this terrible economic crisis, placing the burden of that crisis on those communities who are not only not responsible for it, but are least able to take on that burden. Those are politically disenfranchised communities, economically disenfranchised communities throughout this state. And the other thing I want to say is that, unfortunately, Michigan is not alone. We have seen similar attacks on these same communities, on these same rights in Wisconsin. We've seen it in Ohio, in Indiana, and even at the federal level. Those of you who follow what goes on in Congress, the Republican budget that was proposed this past spring would place the burden of our economic crisis on those communities that are least able to take that burden on. And we need this to stop. And this is an important moment in our country's history. We need to take this on now. We need to challenge it now. We need to stop it. And so I'm going to end my remarks now and open it up to questions. Thank you.
Questions?
I was just trying to find out legally if you all are asking for an emergency injunction or the regular injunction, and we're starting at the local level. What are we here to take further?
Yeah, we're not seeking an immediate injunction. We're seeking declaratory relief. She asked what type of relief we're seeking in the case. We're seeking declaratory relief that the law is unconstitutional, an injunction from it being implemented.
What's declaratory?
It would declare it unconstitutional. The judge would make a ruling in that regard.
What's the process to have that declared unconstitutional?
The process by initiating the lawsuit we did today to seek a determination that this violates our democratic rights.
How soon can you get into court, though, since you're not seeking?
We're into court at 9 o'clock this morning with filing the lawsuit.
What would you would expect the procedure to take place?
How long is it going to take?
The procedure is typical for courts, but realistically, that's something you can look up. I mean, the defendant replies, and then there's a whole process where they get to be heard, and there's hearings. We can't determine that process. What this case and what this press conference is about is our filing and what the lawsuit is about. What the lawsuit is about is what Lansing politicians have done to take local power, political power from the people and transfer it to hand-picked emergency managers.
Are you asking for any kind of damages? Yes.
No money damages at this point.
part of the Mackinac Center, their agenda?
We're not interested in whose agenda it is. There's all sorts of people who have all sorts of agendas. The question was whether this is part of the Mackinac Center agenda, and I think the answer is there are all sorts of people who would like to see this law in place and would like to see reduced local autonomy in the state. We're not concerned with that. We're concerned with increasing accountability of legislators and reducing the ungoverned power accorded to individuals by this law.
And if either of the plaintiffs have a situation that they're in where this could they could actually be their job or anything else could be
Question is to the plaintiffs if they have a particular example of how their individual lives could be affected by this. One of our plaintiffs actually had a car emergency and had to go and get her car towed. But Ms. Lee Payne?
Well, yes. The very fact that we have voted for our legislators, we have voted for school board members, and their power and authority has been usurped by an emergency manager.
That's right.
That takes my vote away. That takes my voice away. So yes.
Ms. Watson, Councilwoman Watson, can you just come and tell us to people what this will mean to people of Detroit and what council, if anything, can do of city government period can do to fight this?
Well, first of all, we're in Detroit, a city where I was born, a city that I love. But it's not just about Detroit. It's really not just about Michigan. It's about this whole nation. This whole nation is vulnerable to assaults on the absolute democratic rights and the constitutional rights that they have a right to take for granted. Citizens have the right to be protected by the Constitution. You have the right to be protected by democratic principles. It's a shame we have to sue in the USA to demand democratic rights and constitutional protections. This is not just about Detroit, and that's why I'm so proud that there are 28 plaintiffs who are standing, like we're standing today in Detroit, in press conferences all over the state of Michigan, with citizens saying, we will not stand by idly and let our rights be taken away. We will stand up as people stood up before us. We are here in this city where the unions were created. We are here in this city that created the opportunity for this nation to win World War II. We built the military vehicles in Detroit to save the USA. We're not going to let our rights be torn asunder in Detroit. This is Detroit, and we're standing up.
Stand up! Stand up, Detroit!
That's right.
We're getting ready to shut down.
Can I say something?
Yep.
I just want to personally commend Mother Watson and all of you for taking a stance for everybody in this city that doesn't have the courage to stand up that we all need to do together. And we love you. We all need to work together to bring this city, this state, and this country together in peace. And we want to thank you. We really want to thank you.
All right. Appreciate it.